Looks like Michelle.
Michelle, can you join the meeting? There we go.
Yeah, we do. I'm sorry.
You're fine. There's Michelle. Hey, Michelle.
What's the picture that's showing?
Hello.
All of us.
I don't want to see Michelle. It was in the view.
I'm here.
Okay, can you hear me, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay, we're getting ready. We're waiting for a few more people.
Okay. No problem.
Are we just one picture or will it be individual?
That's what.
It's okay. I think we have a quorum, so I think we. An opportunity for the public to address the commission regarding items not on the agenda. I'm not seeing any public. Nancy, anybody online?
And there's no public online.
All right, well then let's go ahead and get into the capital projects list. The capital projects list is actually one of the coolest things I think that we get to do as a commission. It's a little bit outside of what I was expecting the first time I came on here, but it's a very important piece of what we get to do. And so tonight we would like to go through, really try to prioritize what we want to see. We don't have to finish today. We have the 23rd meeting on May 23rd in a couple weeks that we will complete our final recommendations and send those to council. So don't feel like we have to get everything done tonight, but I would like to get a pretty good idea of where we want to have our priorities lie. So we all know that there's always more requests than there is actual money. And so the directors have prioritized and by tiers, which thank you, Nancy, for putting together the spreadsheet and allowing us to not only see what was left from 2022. And so let's maybe run through these columns here. The 2022 actual and audited was the amount spent in 2022. The 2022 carry forward is the amount left over in each one of those accounts. I'm not exactly sure the way the account system is set up, but each of these projects has its own account that is tracked. The 2023 appropriation is what what council approved for each one of these projects for 2023. Then the 2023 actual year to date is the amount spent this year. And therefore the available budget would be the ending balance column that is there. So, you know, each one of these has a pretty good amount of money. And then the request for 2024 is shown three more columns over. And that's what we're going to be concentrating on tonight, is trying to prioritize at least $9.65 million down to $5 million.
Chair
So-
Haggerty, if you, sorry to interrupt, but it appears that Ms. Austin has come off mute. Do you mind if for the record we get her?
Not
saying
at all.
she's-
Thank you.
Michelle, can you just state that you're present?
Yes, this is Michelle Austin, and I am present for the meeting via Zoom.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate it.
Thanks
No
for
problem.
joining us, Michelle.
Yep, sorry, I just had back-to-back meetings all day long. I just couldn't make it tonight.
No problem at all. Glad you're
That's
here.
okay. So Michelle, I'm going to mute you for now. And if
Okay.
you've got something, Colin will recognize you or I will to speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, you know, with that, I think we were able to listen to the directors meeting a few weeks ago, and they were able to prioritize a little bit of why they wanted to have each one of these projects. You know, I'd like to kind of step through, you know, each one of these tier one projects and just kind of get a better feeling for how everyone is reacting to the initial number that's there. There's a couple that I know I have questions on. So if there's anything that you have questions on, you know, go ahead and raise or turn your mic on, and that way I can recognize you for speaking here. So with that, I'll just start at the very top, unless anybody has something they want to jump to initially. All right, with that, wayfinding and placemaking. You know, this is one that there's a couple $100,000 in the budget. They're asking for another 200,000. There's also quite a bit of you know, potential for this project, if you will. So, you know, it feels like a lot of money. We didn't appropriate any money last year. And so, you know, I think that's probably why they're asking for $200,000 this year.
I can't hear anymore if anybody can hear me.
I lost the audio as well.
Okay, can you try again? Can you hear us now?
I can hear you now, but I lost you for the last minute or so.
Okay, thank you.
Stanley, can you start over?
Sure. Can you hear me now? I can't recall when the directors went through these different items and regarding the placemaking. I'm all for signage and placemaking, but the description also includes like mailings and campaigns and things like that, which to me doesn't seem as much like a capital improvement. So I didn't know if anyone had any additional information on that.
I don't recall a specific conversation about the wayfinding and placemaking during that meeting. Does anybody else? I don't know. Brian Mr. Either of you? Yeah.
Victor, this is identified as a public works project. Do you have any additional information on that?
Yeah, good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Victor Rochelle, Director of Public Works. Wayfinding and placemaking is actually a communications project. However, it is improving signage throughout the city, in addition to installing more communication type signs in the right of way, in addition to parks and other things of that nature.
Did this include signage for like the Mary Carter Greenway trails also?
I unfortunately, I do not have those specifics.
So I've pulled up what was in the packet. So you can see it's on the screen, and that's the only information that I have as well. We can certainly get more information for the next meeting if you'd like.
You know, this is one I don't recall it being one I had a question about, and I don't recall. I'm afraid I'm going to end up cutting a lot of this, or I'm going to recommend, or I'm going to propose to cut a bit of it. Ms. Bragg, did you want to ask something also?
Sure, yes. So does this include signage for like recognition of the newly named neighborhoods throughout the city?
So I'd have to confirm with our Director of Communications, Chris Hargraff, but we are currently rolling that out. So I would anticipate future neighborhood improvements of those signs could be included in this.
Yes, Ms. Fuller.
I just wanted to confirm one thing. I know tier one totals to, I think, 9.6 million, and you said we have 5 million, right? Okay, so I just want to think like, if we're not going to fully fund everything, maybe we do it to a certain percentage for each item.
Yes, that's an excellent point. So any other questions on wayfinding and placemaking at this time? And maybe we, if we can get some more information on that one for the next meeting would be great. Okay. Parks and Rec parking lot maintenance. I believe this is a specific project for the parking lot itself to Jason, Bellevue, and the rec center. And so there's about 108,000 left in the budget. We appropriated 60,000 last year, asking for another 70,000. Yes, Ms. Townley.
Typically, I am not a fan of parking lot maintenance and spending money on that. But I think with these, the locations of these parks and they're of regional significance, and also many people, I think, can't recall if this one also included Pirates Cove, but they're pretty important parking lots. So I would support the additionals at 70,000.
I'm not seeing Pirates Cove on there, and maybe Ms. Fenton or Mr. Isham, could you remind me, were the Pirate Cove renovations part of Fund 30 and 31, or are those a separate?
I can answer that one, clarify that one. For this line item, it's for all the parks parking lots. It also includes the Malley lot, also the recreation parking lot, and it does include the Pirates Cove parking lot. The Pirates Cove parking lot in the next week or two is going to actually have some repairs done to that will come from this fund. We're going to do some patching to some very large cracks in there, and then also it needed to be restriped. So that's what that fund's being used for.
I assume, does that mean there's none spent in 2023? So is that not a contract that's been signed yet, or has that just not been executed and therefore not been spent?
Correct. It hasn't been executed yet. It's in the works right now.
Would you happen to know what that number is for, and is that just for the Pirates Cove or is that for many sites or several sites?
Yeah, just for the Pirates Cove one, I'm gonna just take a stab at this one that I believe it's at approximately 30,000 is what that's gonna be at. And then I'm not sure if the Maui one lot is planned in there for 23 yet or not.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can add that, these are places that generate revenue for the city and draw people in. So I think we should just, line item that.
Yeah, definitely agree that it's probably money worth spending. I don't want to overfund these, so we might have some money left over where we might be able to take a little bit. I think every dollar is going to end up counting here at the end. So I definitely support putting more money towards it though. Okay, any other questions on the Parks and Rec parking lot maintenance? Yeah.
Does that include the Bellevue Park parking lot?
According to the spreadsheet support, which Nancy, would you mind flipping back over to the PDF of the capital improvement
I'm
projects? It
sorry,
does.
I can't hear you.
Do you mind switching back over to the PDF of the capital improvement projects?
Yeah, Brad's unmuted too, so he can answer that question if you'd like.
Okay, it looks like it's included in that, in that Bellevue Rec Center is included in the parking lot improvements.
That is correct. All of the parks that we have, the parking lots are included with this one. And that does include Bellevue.
What is the turnaround on the need for repaving? How many years do we get out of that?
I can attest specifically for the Pirates Cove lot, the last time it was resealed and striped and cracks filled, that was approximately 4 years ago. As far as the Bellevue lot, it was done 6 years ago is when that one was done. We're kind of holding off a little bit with the Bellevue lot, depending upon if the bond initiative is gonna go forward and be successful. If that's the case, we have money set aside in the Parks Master Plan to include redoing that lot at Bellevue Park.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. That actually brought up a good point. I had forgotten that there was some potential bonding money. Is that noted anywhere in here, which of these requests could or would be covered under that additional bonding?
I believe I don't think it's noted in there, but the only one that would be the parking lot, the line item right now for what we're discussing.
And that was because that was a parks bond, is that correct?
It is a Parks and Recreation, correct?
Parks and Rec bond, okay. So that could be a good thing to note also. When will we find out about that?
Right now, it's in the preliminary stages. We are working with a consultant to do a citizen survey, which we're anticipating to roll out in June. And then probably before we go on to ballot, before it be brought forward to council, would be the end of July, first part of August, if it would be to be put on the ballot.
So realistically, not before that, we're gonna have to make this decision. So, okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
All right, moving on to alley maintenance, everyone's favorite in the entire city. And honestly, Member Woodward last night was mentioning, parking in front of potentially having ADUs, and the reality that garbage cans are out there. And the reason garbage cans are out front is because our alleys are typically not paved. I think maybe a third of them are right now. And alley maintenance, I think, is something I know I highly prioritize. I wish we could fund enough to actually pave them, but in the interim, maybe the alley funding. Ms. Fuller, yeah.
So my question was going to be along those lines. So I know we have alley maintenance in the top tier, and then we have alley paving in the second tier. So over time, as we pave these alleys, will the cost for alley maintenance go up, or like what will that look like? Is it the goal over time to have everything paved, or will that actually make things more expensive?
Great question. So the goal is over time to reduce the maintenance. We would be concrete paving instead of asphalt. The life expectancy on that is decades. So we're not crack sealing it. We don't resurface it. Generally, if concrete, if the right mixtures you use, you don't have potholes. It's designed to handle heavier loads with trash trucks, things of that nature. So we would anticipate long-term that our maintenance costs would go down if we can start paving.
And then one follow-up question for that. So if we have 5 million and there's 9.6 in the first tier, we won't really be scratching the surface of alley paving for next year. And so should we maybe consider moving that to tier 1, at least partially? And then there's one other question. How much do you get for 100,000 of alley paving?
Great question. So in tier 1 is the alley maintenance. So that's not really paving. That is more dust suppression. We got to fix the potholes. Given our staffing levels, we have to bring in an outside contractor as well. As far as how far the dollar goes in the paving aspect, generally alley paving is going to run a whole alley will be somewhere in the ballpark of probably about 225 to 275. So $500,000 would generally get you approximately 2 alleys. That said, the city does have multiple alleys that are some percent already paved by developers. So we're exploring opportunities to stand up an alley paving program, which we will be presenting later once we kind of test the waters and see what might be viable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you happen to know the percentage of alleys that we do have paved?
I can get that for you. I would say it's very low.
Okay.
We're probably in the maybe 5 to 8% range.
Oh, that low? Okay, I thought it was at least higher than that, but
I can confirm that if you'd like and report back.
I'm sorry, Chair. I'm just having some technical difficulties. Do you mind if I check in with our
not at all. Thank you.
Sorry. Michelle, can you come off mute and let me know if you can still hear everybody? Still hear the conversation?
I can hear whoever has the microphone, but I can barely hear you, Nancy.
Oh, that's because I didn't have my microphone on. Okay, so as long as you can hear the room, that's what I needed to check. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're good.
All right, thank you. Okay, so alley maintenance, again, they're only asking for $100,000, which feels like a drop in the bucket. I would have a hard time reducing that amount, even though there's 450K left, but I didn't realize until Ms. Fuller noted that alley paving was in tier 2, and I thought we didn't totally cut that last year, so maybe council must have cut it last year, and yeah, there's no money in there at all for alley paving. So personally, I think I'd almost like to put some money towards that if we can find any.
Like
Also note-
maybe.
Yeah,
oh,
Mr.
sorry.
Martin, yeah.
I was
I
gonna
was
say
gonna say,
maybe
I also note
250.
that sorry, the request just brings it back to what was spent in 2022. So it's just keeping it flat essentially.
Mr. Martinez, can you clarify, are you talking about for the alley paving?
So this
or-
is for alley maintenance, $100,000
Yes.
plus the carry
Yes.
forward.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
I got a comment on the paving.
On alley paving, yeah, we can jump down there.
One concern that I've had about paving the alleys is the alleys that have the storm drains in them. And the city has just gone through a cleanup of storm drains and replacing drains. If the storm drains that are in alleys that are not paved, could those get a priority?
That certainly could be part of the alley paving program that we could consider.
Yeah.
I will say at the moment, the discussion is around doing more of a lottery for alleys so that every alley kind of gets a number. That way we're not picking and choosing, but then we also discussed one alley lottery, one alley combination of maintenance, which speaks to your point about the drainage and concerns about silting up the pipe, and then coordinating with PD on safety. Do they have concerns about certain alleys that might be more prone to having safety concerns? So one lottery, one safety / maintenance was kind of just the general discussion. So to answer your question, yes, we would absolutely lump that into the
Yeah,
maintenance.
Any storm drain that's in an unpaved alley or unsurfaced alley, you're gonna get, every time it rains, it's gravel's going in the drain.
Yes, sir.
And we just clean the drains out, so it'd be really nice to try to prevent that.
And I don't think we want another sinkhole in Oxford,
Yeah,
which is from debris eroding away those pipes. So, yeah, I think that's a really good point. Sorry, let me see.
Yeah, you said how much you think it would cost to do one alley. Here's my thoughts. Maintenance has a high visibility along, among our citizens. So that maintenance has got to be done. I'm thinking with all these stuff, we could do one alley a year. And I would love to do all of those alleys, but maybe not $500,000. Is that what it is? Maybe we take that down to, did you say 325?
225 to 275 range. So
Yeah,
225
we could take that down to, until that time that maybe we bring in some more revenue. And like you said, developers are doing some of the partial ones. So that might be a place where we could just cut it down, just make sure one gets done. And that would have some great visibility too for the city. Oh, look, we got a,
How much did you want in tier 2 allocating?
250 to split that range in the middle.
Thank you.
I would just wonder, that's a drop in the bucket for what the need is. Is there a better use of maybe using that money for a larger plan or engineering or something to go into a larger campaign of alley paving rather than just one alley a year? It's like I said, drop in the bucket.
How many alleys are there?
That is a great question. I have that noted, actually included in my question to check with my team on the percent paved and total number of alleys. So I'll be happy to report that back. To the question about the plan, the paving the alley would actually have to be engineered. So we would survey the alley. So it'd be approximately a 1-year lag from the first kind of kickoff. So we would do a design, make sure we tied into the storm drainage appropriately if it existed. We weren't blocking any gates. And then we'd go out to bid, being that it'd be over 100,000. So go out on the street for an RFP for a contractor to come in and build it and then go from there.
Yeah, and I think my suggestion was more about allocating some money to support a larger plan of a larger project rather than just one alley a year, 2 alleys a year, whatever that is.
We would love additional funding to do a larger plan.
I just wanted to build on Kate's question. So when we're discussing numbers of alleys, what does that count? Like, does it account for a block worth of alleys or a full stretch of street or?
We would typically classify it as a block. So in between 2 paved sections, you'd have that stretch that would generally be unpaved. Again, we do have some developers that have come in and done pieces throughout the city. And we do have a few paved alleys as well.
Question along back to the alley maintenance. Do you have a sense of approximately how many alleys the 100,000 in alley maintenance would cover?
It really depends on the condition of the alley and the maintenance at hand. We did complete last year regrading all alleys to the V channel. So if you look back, we had large amounts in the alley maintenance, and that was to regrade them all for proper drainage. So we do anticipate that being lower, which is why it's only 100,000 proposed. But again, the cost per alley is really going to depend on the conditions that we run into.
Can I ask a follow-up? I guess along those same lines, it sounds like then the 100,000 can get stretched pretty far depending on the condition of the alleys.
Good.
That the paving would be could potentially only reach 20 households or 20 homes, one alley, and that's 5% of our total budget. Is there any cost savings like for mobilization or anything? It just seems like a lot to spend on one alley because you have to spend a lot just to get a contractor there and do all the engineering. Is there an ability to tack it on to another project or something like that and save costs?
Absolutely. We would be looking to do things of that nature, whether we could leverage costs from our concrete utility if we have unit pricing and we could get the contractor to honor that unit pricing. we would be looking for those opportunities, although the equipment is slightly different depending on the project. So the mobilization costs are going to vary given if they have to bring in a grader or a front end loader. And then also the engineering plans, if they show the grades changing to have positive drainage and make sure we tie into all the properties. So to answer your question, yes, we'd absolutely look for those opportunities to leverage unit cost savings. But it's going to be really, again, dependent on the alley and the other contracts that we already have out on the street.
One more, because it is our favorite subject. Last year's maintenance and dust suppressant, was there anything new done? Was the dust suppress? I just noticed in my alley that it seemed like it was done differently than years past. Was there anything tried, techniques or anything new from last year?
Not to my knowledge. In full transparency, I started on December 5th. So
Okay.
I have talked to the team. I know we did complete that grading.
Mhm.
And I know we generally put down mag chloride, which binds to the dust particles.
Yeah.
And we have a good bit of that actually still left if we're doing the dust suppression as opposed to a third party. So
Yeah, I was just wondering if anything new was tried, if it worked, if it didn't work, and if anything new should be done this year. Held up great through the beginning of winter, and then it all fell apart again. But that's the challenge, right?
yes, sir.
Yeah, my understanding of it was the grading was a new process to go through everything. And I think they'd done some of the dust suppressant in previous years, but I didn't realize we got to every alley, which I think is great. And if we can, do that, I mean, it's 150,000 that we spent last year, I guess, or this year so far. Did we spend 558, I guess, now that I'm looking at that correctly?
Looks like we spent 558 last year.
Okay.
Nothing yet this year.
And nothing this year, okay. No, well, yeah, okay, so we allocated 150. And then we had a carryover of 295, okay.
Correct.
So if we wanted to do something similar again, we're basically gonna be spending another, we would need every dollar of that $100,000.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Anything else on alley paving or alley maintenance? All right, let's move on to the concrete program, accessible ramps. And I think this is another one that typically gets a lot of people excited. I think it's an important part. Our ramps and our sidewalks are sorely in need of additional funding. I'm not sure which one I want more, alleys or sidewalks, but they're both up there. So
I just wanted to speak to the accessibility piece. I think it's just really important for anyone in wheelchairs or I guess bikes, I don't know, to have access to the sidewalks and the ramps. I just want to make sure that we fund it appropriately.
I've seen a lot of sidewalks getting done in my neighborhood. I guess what I'm confused about is that there's a lot appropriated, but we just haven't spent much. And we keep appropriating this every year. So do we need this much? I mean, I've seen a lot get done. How much more do we need to do?
Ms. Hubback, and I'm not sure, maybe I could clarify again, is the 2022 actual unaudited the amount that we've spent in 2022?
Yeah, that's how much has been spent.
Oh, that is how much has
Okay.
been spent. Okay.
Correct.
All right. So the carryover is
Ms. Hubback, you need to turn your mic back on. Nope. Yeah, Ms. Perry.
For me, on requests like this, it would be helpful to have a sense of how many are needed, how many we currently have, how accessible our city is, to have some sort of perspective on whether that 350 is sufficient or it's too high, et cetera.
Sure, we'd be happy to provide that information. One thing that's also included in here is upgrading our ramps to current ADA standard. We have quite a few ramps at corners that don't meet the current standard with the truncated domes and the 2%. They most likely met the standard at the time they were installed prior to current ADA accessibility requirements. So we do have all of the handicap ramps in our GIS database, so it should be pretty easy to pull that information.
So when we see the carryover, I'm sure, and I just want to confirm this, when they request the amount, are they accounting for that plus the 50 that carries over? Like, so I guess a better way to ask this is if we appropriated 350,000 and then there's 50,000 carryover, are they thinking that maybe 50,000 will carry over? Like, I guess that question's kind of hard to ask, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I believe they had 50,000 at the beginning of 2023. That was what was left over in the account. We did allocate 350 last year, so they're at 400 and something, $400,000, but they've only spent $2,900 this year. And so I think they are asking for the full 350, if that's the question.
Okay, because maybe to Brenda's point, we could take it from 350 to 325 or 300 or something to try to estimate what they actually spent last year, unless there's a reason they kind of need more for next year.
I'd agree with that as well, unless there's a detailed plan of we're planning on doing this many in this year. And I'm always get concerned when it's the same number that was allocated last year is being asked for this year. Just my skepticism, you know?
Yeah, and they did spend 272, so maybe the number is 275 that we can put down at least as a placeholder. Ms. Fenton, if you don't mind adding, you already got that, great. Okay. Anything else on concrete accessible ramps? Okay. Concrete utility city share. I think that's just that's not the sidewalk, that's a separate one. I forget what the concrete utility city share would be.
So this, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if people are looking at their PDF, it's page 26.
Yeah, and so this is the city share of the concrete utility. You know, residents can elect to be out of the concrete utility. They're generally in it by default. So this is preparing concrete, curb gutter and sidewalk. And then the city contributes to the fund. It's an enterprise fund.
Okay, and it's about the same number that's being spent every year, or been spent last year, although there's a bit of a fund balance, so.
And if I could speak to that.
Please.
One of the challenges that we've had are our staffing levels and the ability to manage the contracts, manage the contractor and get them out the door. Our engineering team is now fully staffed for the first time in a long time. So we anticipate accomplishing many more projects in 23 and then moving forward with a full staff.
It's great to hear. That actually brought up a question that I did have back in the alley maintenance, just if anybody finds if I go back, or alley paving at least. Could any of that be funded from, as Mr. Adams had noted, if it is related to stormwater a lot, could it be funded at all from the stormwater program? I know there was quite a bit of bonding that went for that. I know there's quite a few large projects that were coming out of that also, but is it possible to get funding from other sources for that?
We could certainly look at other sources. I would say the stormwater fund will be exhausted pretty rapidly. We're doing the South Englewood detention pond. We actually are going to be putting that out to bid here by the end of the month. Whatever money's left in there will then roll to the Hamden stormwater project. In Old Hamden, we're getting ready there. That's across the medical district. We're going to be upgrading the pipes there to hold capacity and prep for the complete streets project that'll come in after that and on top of it. Kind of make ready so that the pipes and everything are sized appropriately. Moving forward after those kind of two big projects, the stormwater fund will be at a very low dollar amount moving forward. So we don't anticipate being able to do any big projects every year. It'll be every other year. We'll probably have to accumulate and then tackle projects stormwater wise.
I know that's the second priority for the stormwater fund, is that Old Hamden stretch because of the complete streets project. So it's also the water and sewer that I believe are going to be upgraded through that stretch, and then we want to all do that at one time. This is probably not the exact venue, but I think that that money might be better spent in other places. I don't know that Old Hamden has a huge stormwater issue. Just in my experience of living basically on that street, it's steep, so water can move pretty quickly. it might be better spent in other places if we can reallocate that, just as a thought for a future day.
Sure.
Anyways, moving on to well, actually, anybody else on the concrete utility city share? And so just to reiterate, and thank you, Kate, for letting us know that it's on page 26. This is also for ped ramps and other concrete sidewalks, is it?
Yeah, it's damaged concrete sidewalk, curb and gutter.
And do you have a sense of what the reach is for the 350,000 for that?
So it goes back to material costs. Concrete and asphalt are pretty much tied to market these days. Asphalt, of course, on the petroleum side. 350, I would say, depending on the number, whether it's attached curb, gutter, and sidewalk, kind of one piece, you could probably get at least 1 to 2 blocks done, but we're doing this throughout the city. So we're doing maintenance in just about every zone.
Yeah, concrete prices are going ridiculous right now.
Yes, they are.
I'm seeing them at close to $2,000 a yard on some of my projects, which is crazy.
You say this is the sidewalks?
Well, it's part of the concrete utility, so it's damaged sidewalks, not missing sidewalks. So if we have sidewalks that's heaved, cracked, spalling and coming apart, that's part of it, as well as the curb and gutter.
So the insurance that people pay in to have their sidewalks redone, is that, where does that money go?
This is actually the match for that. So this is the city's match to that, and it all goes into the concrete utility fund, and then that concrete utility does the repair.
Okay.
And so are we required to put in a certain amount because it is a match?
That is a great question. I do not know the answer to that, but I will find out.
Okay, and I was gonna ask maybe a little more detail about what that utility, you said that is a utility. I guess I wasn't aware that we had a concrete utility. I must have just missed that in previous years. What does that mean? What is that? Is that, and you said you're gonna opt out? I guess, how does that program work?
So it's you pay into it as part of I believe it may actually be in your water bill. If you opt out of it, then you are, as a homeowner, then responsible for the sidewalk, curb and gutter in front of your home if it cracks or becomes damaged, things of that nature.
Anything else in that? I guess if we find out if we have to match that, that would be great to know too.
Okay, got it.
All right, the East Dartmouth traffic calming, I believe, is one of the ones that has a grant associated with it. So they're requesting 200,000. We've got $1 million grant. Is that, do we know, is that the minimum that we can contribute, or is that a full matching? Looks like we've got 1.3 in the account right now, but I'm assuming we're probably gonna need that in every dollar associated. So
Correct. That is the matching funds for construction.
okay, and do we have enough, or do we have that under contract, or are we waiting? Did the bids come back on that at all? Have we put that out to bid?
We have not put it out to bid yet. The plans are at 100%. They're going through review with the state now, CDOT, since CDOT is the kind of manager of the funding. So when you get funding through CDOT, they take over review authority. We do have a budget shortfall there. So we have removed one of the roundabouts in the middle. It was originally 3 roundabouts. The 2 outer intersections actually had the crash pattern that was identified. The third was more for consistency. However, meeting with CDOT, they have come to the table with more money, and we've rescoped the project so that we can hit the budget numbers originally anticipated.
And that's with the 200,000 that's requested, or?
That's correct.
Okay, so you would need, do you need that as part of the grant match?
We have the grant match. We need the 200,000 to construct.
Chair Haggerty, Miss Austin has her hand up.
Yes, Ms. Austin.
Yeah, this is one of my pet projects. So can you explain to me what was spent in 2022? That 111,000, And what the 15,000 that we've spent so far this year, what do those numbers represent?
Yes, ma'am. So the design and survey was completed. We hired an outside consultant to complete the ground field survey and design and then permitting through CDOT.
Okay. So
And-
basically, so some of it was spent in 23. So it was 28, 22 to 23 that was the design numbers. So it's basically 126 or something for the total engineering, basically what you're saying?
Correct. Coordination, engineering, permitting, and then moving, now we're moving into the RFP stage.
Okay, and so the 200 grand is because the total project is going to be $1.5 million, well, closer to $1.6 million.
For construction, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and when were those numbers last updated?
They were updated in March.
With or without Clarkson being included?
We ran it with and without so that we could know where we were budgetary wise. That's when we approached CDOT and we're on the hunt for additional funding, and CDOT did come to the table with some additional money to help offset those costs.
Okay, and then this is just because this is a project that's very close to my house. So that's why I'm asking all these questions, because I drive Dartmouth at least 2 or 3 times a day. So forgive me and for my indulgence of all these questions. Are they going to update any of the traffic counts or crash rates for those intersections before they construct this?
So what we'll be doing is monitoring the crash rates at the time or after construction and once opening to make sure they're effective. And
so you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it ahead of time. You're just going to wait and see what happens when you put them in.
correct. We've already done a pre-study, which is how we determined the intersections had an accident pattern problem that was correctable by roundabouts, and the roundabout was the preferred alternative to address the accident pattern.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I've been following this project since its inception. So because I believe all of that data was based on 2018 and 2019 numbers, and the fatalities and the crashes and all that stuff. So my question, I guess I should have been more specific, is are those the 2018 and 2019 studies going to be updated before this project commences?
No, ma'am. Those are typically not done once the project is kicked off and advancing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I do have one follow-up question. Is it going to be 1.6 million or will it be 2.6 to include the CDOT funding as well?
Yeah, thank you, Colin, because I was adding that 200,000 to the 1.3 million to get that 1.6 million. So thank you for clarifying.
Bear with me 1 minute. I'll need to find the total number for you.
Sure. And I don't think that's, I think we're recognizing that we need 200,000. I don't know if it.
Correct.
So why don't, while you're looking, we can go ahead and move on to the Oxford Bed Bridge, which is also looking for another $500,000 and also has a grant match of 1.6 million. You know, this is one that is showing only 335,000 in the account. I thought there was more funding allocated. I had thought that we had allocated money in previous years potentially. Looks like we cut it out last year. Was this one that, do we have to spend that within a certain amount of time? Like, do we need to get on funding this?
So there is a budget shortfall on that one, and we do have grant funds. We're not at risk at the moment of losing those grant funds. And so they're not accounted for in that number there. The developer is coming to the table with additional funding. We'll have to see how that plays out as the development process continues.
And that was actually going to be one of my thoughts, is we had as stipulation for approving a few PUDs, I believe, requested funding for the Oxford Bridge. Is that reflected in the numbers that are here, or when does that money come in?
So that is not reflected in our requests. That is would be in the total budget number for the entire project. So the number that's requested is to try and close the gap, not including the developer money. So the developer money plus the number requested would make the project viable to go to construction. I would add that, as I mentioned, we'll have to follow the development process and see how it continues, and that may or may not impact the additional funding from the developer.
Can you remind me, is all the construction and engineering complete on that?
Correct, it is.
Sorry, design and engineering.
Yes, ma'am. I wish the construction was complete. Yeah.
And then I think you also asked about when does the participation happen? So the way our ordinances are written on those PUDs, that the developer's participation happens prior to the issuance of their CO. So it's not necessarily at the beginning of their construction, but more towards the end.
So realistically, the likelihood of this needing to be constructed in 2024 is pretty minimal, considering we're going to need the money from the construction, and they're going to have to build those before they'll get their COs. So they're not going to contribute their funding until they're basically done with construction, and they haven't even broke ground yet on any of those projects.
I don't necessarily want to speculate on when they would do it. They're just not required to do it until the CO. They may want to give us the money way ahead of time. They may choose to wait until closer to. That's just what our requirement is per the ordinance.
Any other questions on the Ped Bridge? Mr. Adams?
Do we have a time frame on when it's going to actual start groundbreaking? Is that?
We do not have a time frame currently. I think most of you are probably aware that there were some community members that submitted. You may have to help me before I butcher this language.
It's a petition for a recall of several council members. So I think some of these projects might be pending.
I think what I was
outcome.
talking about was the
Oh.
Sam's Automotive PUD.
Ah,
There was an initiative submitted by some citizens to collect signatures. The signatures have been submitted, but they're counting and verifying that information currently. So once we get an updated timeline, we can provide more information. But right now, we don't really have a timeline on when. From my understanding, the developer is waiting for that part to follow through before they submit for building permits.
Can you clarify what they are have signed a petition to revoke the PUD? Is that the question, or what are the signatures requesting?
I am looking for the exact language, but it would impact this development. Yes.
And was it the same? I thought we had multiple that were contributing funding to the Oxford Ped Bridge, not just the Sam's redevelopment. I thought there was the other ones on Windermere. Yeah.
The other ones, I'm not sure where they stand, but we can definitely get that information before the next meeting.
Thank you.
What percentage, if they, like, are we relying on the Sam's developer to put towards this project, or what amount?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
What percentage or amount are we relying on the Sam's developer to put towards this project?
Let me search their ordinance to see what was reflected, at least from the public hearing standpoint. I'm not sure if Victor has any additional funding or information on it. Give me just a second.
Yeah, the discussions were the developer was funding between 500 and 600,000.
Between all the developments, or between just a
Just as a
single?
Sam's PUD.
Oh.
I'm not aware of any other developments contributing. It was the city plus grant funds.
I have a, I guess, question related to this, but also in general, because there's other projects that are associated with developers, adding in funds. Is the city able to, if we recommend and other folks, the council approves to spend these funds, can you go ahead and construct it and then get funds back from the developer, or you have to get them in hand first?
That one, I'm not sure. We may have to discuss that at a staff level to determine whether that can occur.
Yeah, I would say we would need to check with financing. Generally speaking, we want to have the funds encumbered before we let the contract. Now, whether we were able to cover that out of a different fund temporarily, we need to circle up with the finance department.
Mr. Adams, are you good?
Wasn't the last 500,000, I kind of remember that number, caused by the price increases during the pandemic? And that's what delayed it from the previous start date?
That's correct. The plans are complete and we got bid numbers and they came in approximately $1 million over. We were able to put together an additional 500,000 out of our side of the budget, but we were still short roughly $500,000, and that's where the kind of $500,000 Oxford discussion came from.
Be nice to get this done so
Agreed.
that we don't have any more increases.
I absolutely agree with you, Mr. Adams. My thought though is if we had to put a number down, I don't think I'd put the 500,000 because I'm not confident that it's going to happen next year, but I'd like to throw something at it so that way when it does happen, we can be ready for it. And maybe that's in 24 to finish the funding. I'm sorry, 25. But maybe just as a placeholder number, Sven, if you could maybe put maybe 200,000 and see where we're at from there.
That intersection down there is pretty bad as it is. And once all these apartments are built and all the people are down there, it's going to be very pedestrian dangerous for people walking across the Oxford to go to the Oxford station.
And the developer is making improvements and modifying the traffic signal as well on their, as part of their development obligation.
Mhm.
And just to tie on to what Carl was saying is that if we're waiting for a CO, or if that has to be the case, then people will be living there for several years before construction is completed. So if there's a way to bump it up, that would be great.
Are the approaches the responsibility of the developer? If I'm not mistaken, are they doing the path, the regional trail through their side of the property, south of Oxford? Like, so will they have to construct that and then thankfully, or hopefully all we would have to do is the bridge abutments and set a prefab bridge?
That's correct. That's my understanding, is that they would have to complete all their public improvements before this first certificate of occupancy. So no one could live there until they were done with all their obligations, including the payment as outlined in the approved PUD, pending the discussion about the referendum.
I mean, I think it would still be something to get the bridge set, but hopefully it wouldn't be as long, but yeah. All right, moving on to the pavement maintenance by area. Definitely something that I think we can all appreciate as well. That said, we spent 1.3 million last year. Apparently they funded it by $3 million last year. And we've still got 3.26 in the account right now. And again, I guess, is there anticipated direct needs planned for 3 million of this, 1 million of this? Do you know that? Thank you.
Sure. So the maintenance by area. So it really depends on the zone. So we do the city in zones, and each year the zone is going to be a little bit different. And we have stood up this year, again, using our GIS and pavement condition index tracking software, the conditions of the road and prioritizing those which have the lowest pavement condition index. So we have a better handle on what our costs are going to be, what roads we're going to do, and what exactly needs to be done. So whether it's full depth reclamation, where we rip all the asphalt up and start basically from the dirt, or if it's just a mill and inlay where we scrape off the top layer and put a new layer in, that's going to depend on the pavement condition index. And so our new tracking and analyzing software and individual doing that is put together the plan. And so we do expect, as we move through these zones, to have a better handle on costs and expend all those funds.
So just clarify, you're anticipating spending the 3.26 in 23
Correct.
and then requesting another $1 million for 24.
That's correct.
So I was really excited by $1 million sitting in there that I thought I could cut because there's $3.2 million already sitting in the account.
We're happy and excited to spend it all this year.
Yeah,
Back to
I-
our full staff and the roads conditions, need some attention within the city boundary.
Yeah, do you feel like we're behind on some of this maintenance that's been deferred?
Yes. And some of that is, again, back to staffing levels. Our streets crew is almost at full staff for the first time also in several years. We've also got a new hot mix patch machine. So we've been doing what's called a cold mix patch. When the weather's cold, you can't get the asphalt hot, get it to emulsify and adhere to the pavement. And so we've, again, back to the using data. We now track all of our cold patches with an automatic reminder to the team to go back out 1 to 3 months later to hot mix patch it, as opposed to just driving for potholes, so to speak. So we're utilizing the data and our equipment very efficiently to stay on top of that and really improve our road conditions across the board.
It's good to hear they have the personnel now. It's and the Oxford patches are done. Those are, but whatever, it's not going to take a great deal of asphalt, but there has been a problem with asphalt availability. Is that going to be an issue?
During COVID, there was a problem because the plants weren't running at 100%. You had to kind of shop around for what plant was open, just depending on their manpower to operate. We don't anticipate that to be a problem moving forward.
Okay, good.
If oil prices could come down, that would help.
And I'm excited that we can spend that. I didn't realize we were doing that in-house, which makes, go ahead.
Sorry, so just to clarify, the patching and stuff, we were all doing in-house, but the actual reconditioning, milling and inlay, we do outsource.
Okay.
So the emergency stuff we're doing in-house, and then the very large projects where it's, miles of road, we do contract that out.
And both of those scenarios are covered in this line item?
This one is primarily the hiring a contractor to do the more miles and miles of road.
Okay, well, there goes my thought of having a bit of a surplus here on this one. So if you're telling me you're planning to spend the 3.26, and I think we all agree that pavement maintenance is an important part, I think we're gonna have to be close to that $1 million mark for you for next year. So, okay, well, let's I guess Nancy, if you don't mind putting that at $1 million, we can see where we're at for, not really saving any money yet, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. Road and bridge. Moving on, that's the one I always get confused between, is that different than the pavement maintenance by area? I think that's, if
Yep.
you can maybe just give a quick high level overview for that.
Yes, sir. You had asked that question when we presented to city council. So I did some due diligence. We're going to rename this. It actually should be road and bridge materials for maintenance. So this is actually when we talked about how the crew goes out and patches the road, this is the asphalt that we buy, the cold mix, the hot mix, the sealant, things of that nature is what road and bridge is. So this is money that our team is using. And this is new. We moved the money. That's why you see the kind of the difference there in the years and the dollar funding. We moved the money that was there previously is now under road maintenance area, and road and bridge is just materials for in-house staff.
Can you repeat that one more time on what you moved where?
So if you look at road and bridge for 2022, you will see, if I can get my eyes to focus, it's really small on my paper, 1.2 million. We're not buying $1.2 million worth of material for our in-house staff. So last year, pavement area maintenance also came out of that. in addition to materials. Moving forward, if you look at the balance and the request on that, it dropped significantly because that is just for materials for staff.
And so, excuse me,
Thank you.
for the, for this work that's done by in-house staff, the cost of that labor is not reflected in these capital budgets, that's somewhere else, or is that part of the,
It comes out of salary.
which is, we're not, okay.
Yes, sir.
But that wasn't the case as it was budgeted last year.
Well, and last year that was out, we were contracting out. So in the road and bridge fund last year, we used some of that money for the pavement area maintenance, which went to a contractor, and we bought materials for staff. So we're trying to clean up our accounts.
Got it.
And that's why I need to have that one renamed. We'll get that done so that it's clear what that money's being used for.
Got it.
And I guess, do you anticipate $1 million in materials then? Because you got 700K still sitting in there plus 300,000. I think you were saying the 1.2, you wouldn't have spent that. So I guess, can I save some money? Can I get rid of maybe 100,000 there?
That's certainly
A possibility. Okay.
a possibility. Yes.
Okay.
I will say again, with the equipment up and running and a full team, we hope to put as much hot mix out and fix our potholes permanently this summer, moving forward as we continue to catch up.
That's great. Pothole season's coming up. So
Oh, it's here.
yeah, let's Nancy, let's put that at 200,000 just for now. Just in a hope and dream for myself. Okay, Union Avenue Bridge rehabilitation and the paving, I believe are intertwined. Maybe not exactly specifically, but it's the approaches for the Union Avenue Bridge is the paving part. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the Union Avenue Bridge is the top deck to replace that top deck, which is very similar to what we're going to be doing on Dartmouth. That's how we estimated the cost for Union Avenue is based on our Dartmouth Bridge, which we have pricing on, and they're going to be breaking ground this month. Yay. But we will be replacing that if, I think someone made a comment earlier about Union Avenue. We got potholes in the road and the bridge deck is not in great shape. We get every other year report from CDOT on the condition of our bridges. And besides Dartmouth, this was the other one that we need to get fixed ASAP.
Was Dartmouth paid by a grant? And is there any plans to apply for a grant for the Union Bridge or for like Infrastructure Reduction Act funds or something like that?
Let me check for you on the Dartmouth Bridge. We are always looking for opportunities for grants. We do have to be cognizant, though, that sometimes grants can be a double-edged sword. It's not quite free money. It adds a lot of federal bureaucracy and requirements that we don't have if we fund it ourselves. We actually have to hire consultants to manage the contracts, the Davis-Bacon wage, and all the certifications that are required at the federal level. We don't have those resources in-house, and we don't do them so much that it would make sense to bring them in-house. So to answer your question, we would be looking for that opportunity for Union. It has not been identified yet. And then for Dartmouth, just double check. I don't think we had any grant funds.
Was the repaving not identified previously, or did we just not fund that last year? Because the 1.5, there wasn't anything appropriated in 2023.
That is a great question. I do not know the answer, but I can find out for you.
And I guess, again, along those lines are, not that I'm trying to punt everything, but is there a timing associated where we'll need to do the bridge that's going to get torn up, and then it doesn't make sense to do that right away, or can we delay slightly to do the rest of the repaving associated with that approach?
So the repaving, I will say we're coordinating with utilities. They do have to replace a water line in Union. So we want them to get in there first. We believe from a timing perspective, they are well out in front of us. And we would want to do the bridge first before we do the road. given the type of equipment that's going to roll in there with the bridge deck and the preformed slabs.
I've got a question
Please.
about tipping fees used by Waste Management. They're cheaper over there on Oxford than Republic pays in Commerce City. Any thought to raising the tipping fee because they're using that bridge?
That is a good question. I have not heard any discussion around that, but I'm happy to talk to finance about it.
I think it's
See
a
if there's any possibilities
good,
there.
yeah, I think, I know it is cheaper for Waste Management from when having done that wonderful unified trash discussion. And they use it for other cities. So maybe that's a place we need to look for sure. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Adams? Do you want to, Mr. Adams? Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Great.
Actually, that's what I was gonna say is trash trucks, the single hauler trash project was equal to one trash truck to 7,000 cars. And the Waste Management trucks that go across that bridge and down that little short street, 1 block street there, every other vehicle is a trash truck. So you've got, it's amazing that it's in as good a condition as it is. I don't see any way that we could get any money from Waste Management, but possibly a grant for trash removal. I don't know how that would work or what would be involved in that, but Waste Management should be paying something on that because that's their main route across that bridge.
I've got a somewhat related question that I've been meaning to ask, and this will probably be something I'll need to research, but it feels like gas prices are always slightly cheaper in Inglewood. Is our tax less than surrounding areas on fuel? Is that why it's cheaper here when you're going along Hamden? Those are typically the cheapest that I ever see in the area. Do we have a tax, or is that's like a state?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I can try to find out before our next meeting though.
Yeah, I'm not advocating raising it much, but every penny maybe helps. And if we can find a way, I'm always appreciative when I do have to get gas that it is cheapest here. All right. So with that, I would like to consider the repaving really has to happen after the bridge rehab. And if that's the case, it's probably, it's going to have to be a fast process if the Waste Management trucks are using it. What's the timeline for that? Like, is that going to be early next year and then they'll be able to do it within a month or
For the-
6 months
for the bridge?
I'm sorry, for the bridge rehabilitation.
I would anticipate that actually probably mid to late 24.
If that's the case, then I'd like to move the repaving to 25's budget. I hate to punt it, but we need money. And if it has to happen after anyways, then I think we should try to reallocate that funding.
Well, just one comment, which I think everybody's already touched on. And I know we've got to cut down to the number we got to get to. I do anticipate construction costs continue to escalate, but that kind of is what it is, I suppose. And I did want to circle back real quick. There was a question a minute ago whether or not Dartmouth had grant funding. Yes, it does have grant funding. I will say the Dartmouth project also has a much greater extent. That project actually includes repaving from the Dartmouth Bridge all the way to Santa Fe, as well as upgrading traffic signals, where Union Bridge is just the bridge deck.
How far does the repaving extend?
The repaving, yeah, Santa Fe to the bridge.
Okay, and is that our limit? Is the bridge our limit before it turns to Sheridan?
I'm sorry?
Is the bridge of the Platte River, is that where Inglewood stops and Sheridan starts, or do we go all the way to Federal?
I believe that's where it stops and the bridge is ours.
I just lost my map. Okay.
Well, I would like to see the bridge repaired, of course. And you said that it's integral that we have to have the repaving done all the way to the street. I think we talked about this last year. again, I want you to realize that it's really mostly Waste Management that uses it. And if it's an inconvenience for them to have to go around potholes, then maybe they would contribute more in tipping fees. Now, it's possible they will pass that on to the consumer, but nonetheless, and there's the other dump, they can go clear to Commerce City if they want, but Commerce City and tipping fees are higher than our Oxford dump. We could at least meet that price.
I'd like to just point out that Inglewood does actually extend all the way to Federal in this location. So Union is all of ours. Yeah. Okay. I was thinking it stopped at the river for some reason.
Correct. Yeah, it looks like just on the north side, there's a couple spots where Sheridan touches, but the right of way does appear to be ours.
Okay. In that case, and I'd like to get it funded as quickly as possible after. So maybe Nancy said maybe we put 500,000 to get something towards the repaving, and I think we need to probably fund that whole 1.8 million for the bridge rehab, at least at this point, you know, as we're for planning. All right, on to IT. And thank you, Joe, for being here. There's a few new items that weren't on last year, being the badge system and the Cora portal. I believe you touched on these a little bit, or actually I think Director King touched on these a little bit during the meeting a few weeks ago, but could you maybe give us a little bit of a heads up on why we need 725,000 for badging?
Yeah, so the biggest issue is that underlying equipment is outdated and becoming less dependable as time goes on. Panels do not consistently update with the systems, which results in too much or too little access for a particular person. For example, when a new card is added or a card is disabled, some of the panels may not receive that information in a timely manner. So you walk an employee out, for example, disable the card, and the card is still active on some of the panels. So that's probably one of the bigger issues. Additionally, we have multiple systems. So we have some facilities that are on one system while other facilities are on a separate system, which makes it difficult to manage. We also have conventional keys in the mix right now, and then some of our doors operate on key fobs. The key fobs are not something that can be remotely disabled. So they, you know, if we don't manage to get that key fob back, it becomes a security issue. So best practice is to move to a single system for the entire city, so that it can be easily managed from a single location and take advantage of increased visibility and control over the system that way.
And I think safety is paramount for everybody here, and so that's an important part. Was this actually anticipated that it would all happen at one time, or will this kind of be a phased process? You know, can we, you know, put some of the money towards this year, split it up half and half, and the reality of if you're changing, it seems like multiple systems, obviously that creates a little bit of excess work in the years where there's two systems, but is that a possibility?
It would not be ideal for the simple fact that you are creating an additional system when, you know, part of the problem is we have too many systems to manage as it is. Also, these systems tend to be proprietary, so we need kind of a big bang to get everything, you know, moved over to a new system and lit up so that we can use it. So developing it in small chunks would not be a good solution.
What happens if this building that we're in right now is demolished and we move to the fitness center? Are we going to have to redo? Will the cost spent on this building be to waste?
The actual equipment could be reused in the new building, relocated. The wiring would not be able to be reused. So you'd have installation involved in a move, but the equipment that we purchased could be moved.
And that brings up kind of another question of, is this something that we've done recently? I feel like if I'm not mistaken, we had gotten new badges not that long ago, or a new system, or was that just kind of piecemealed system?
You may be thinking of the police department, the new building over there. They did install a security system in there. It is attached to the same system as the Civic Center.
Okay. And would that system need to be replaced, or is the police system operational and functional?
It is operational and functional. Ideally, it would be replaced as well, assuming that we went with a new vendor. If for some reason we went with the same vendor and upgraded, we may be able to use some of that equipment depending on compatibility. And that's certainly a consideration that we will look at.
Does the 725,000 include that for the police as well?
Yes.
Okay, so it's possible that if we went with the same vendor, that number might be less if we can reuse some of the systems.
Yes, it's possible.
I just want to add to your comment around safety, and I just think that having a patchwork of different systems is not ever a good idea in keeping our city staff and others safe, especially given kind of the current environment that we live in our world. So I fully support funding this project in full.
Thank you. Other thoughts on the badging?
So just one follow-up question. So you said that the police station and civic center are both on the same system, that possibly could be expanding that same vendor to other buildings. About what percentage does the police department and civic center account for the whole project?
I would just be estimating. I've just been in this seat for about a week now, but I would say 10 to 15% probably.
Okay. And they're not related per se, but the two biggest ticket items that you all have is then the phone system. You know, it feels like everything's kind of transitioning away from phones. I feel like we spending money on a system that's not really being utilized at all. I don't even know the last time I used an office phone. I'm sure there's a lot of good reasons, and a lot of, you know, whether that's the people using utility bills and things like that, you know, maybe more forward facing people. But is this to replace everybody's phone system? What, could you maybe touch on that a little bit also?
I believe that this is to replace everyone's phone systems, although I will say that we are embracing the soft phone idea, where your computer becomes the phone, and we can eliminate at least some of the equipment costs associated with that. You know, there's a trade-off there a little bit, because each soft phone does require licensing, which is typically a more of a subscription type situation where you purchase this license annually. We would be looking at you know, a good balance there, so that you know, the majority of the people would be able to use the soft phone in keeping with the mobility direction that we're taking. But there would be some need for office phones. You know, the hub would be an example, or anywhere where there are users who are not part of our Active Directory system. For example, Pirates Cove and Rec Center, those areas would still require a hard phone.
And I guess are the phones currently functional? What's the reason for replacing those right now?
The biggest reason is the underlying equipment is end of life. So after this current term, which is expires early next year, the system will no longer be supported, and therefore we would not be able to get repairs and that sort of thing if necessary.
So the phones will still work. It's if they break, we wouldn't be able to get support to fix them.
That's correct.
Mr. Adams?
Is there any connection between the phone system and the Arapahoe County Emergency Manager person that there might be some way to get some Arapahoe County money for that?
I don't believe so. This would not be considered, I guess, to use the term critical in an emergency situation. There are some other options there when we're talking about an emergency situation.
Is, excuse me, is this $500,000 for a similar system to what is being used now, a server-based local on-site, I forget what it's called, PBX, or is it that same type of technology?
Yes.
I'll just tell you, I would really like to see the badge system updated just because what she said, Tina said, that there's some security risks today. And maybe ask IT to limp along with the phone system until we move. That would be my preference.
And I'd also like to see a comparison of what a cloud-based soft phone system would be compared to the $500,000.
I just wanted to ask a follow-up question about the soft phone system. Are there any nearby cities that are already doing that?
I am not sure about that. I know that we do it to a certain extent. We're up against licensing limitations right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning again towards maybe not fully cutting it, but making a pretty good cut to that in order to, fund the other things that are a priority for us. I'd love to fund everything, but I don't know if it's gonna happen or not. So maybe just for a placeholder, Nancy, if you don't mind putting $100,000 and we can see if that goes up or down from there. I think the Cora request jumping back up, I believe that's not really an option, right? I think that's something we need, and therefore, I don't know if that's Victoria, if you think that's something that is an option, or that's just 25,000, that's what it is.
I mean, I can't speak to the exact cost and whether or not there are different options to accomplish this, but we have an obligation to make sure that we respond to core requests. We do so within 3 days, and this helps not only improve staff efficiency, but also helps citizens get the information that they're seeking.
Is there more of an explanation of why it's 25,000 each year? Is that like a
Yeah,
develop?
it's a subscription.
And what does that actually, that subscription get? Does that mean, do they have access then to our files, like a third party that does the requests, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the platform would be a hosted solution with an interface into our document management system. So users, citizens could use the system, log in. There would be certain files that could be accessible immediately depending on the security aspect of things. So they could actually retrieve their own files. In other cases, if there needed to be some sort of a review or a redaction before they're released, then they would make a request for that copy, and then our people would then do whatever redaction that is necessary, and then submit the final copy to them.
I mean, Not saying it's no money, but it feels like a relatively small amount for something that might free up staff quite a bit. And if that's the case, I think I'd be supportive of it. Okay. Any other thoughts on that? All right, moving on. Network development IT. Could you maybe explain a little bit more? Because we got PC replacement, pretty straightforward on that, but network.
Yeah, so network development and PC replacement are kind of hand in hand. The network development is a program that's ongoing year after year where we use to replace our network devices, expand the network when necessary. We use it for replacing storage area networks, things of that nature. The PC replacement is a similar program that focuses on the desktops and the laptops that our people use to do their work. We are on a 4-year rotation program or replacement program for every 4 years. Due to, you know, the technology improvements and warranty and things of that nature, we figure we can get about 4 years out of a laptop or a desktop, and then it needs to be replaced.
I know Noel would want us to fund this fully. So, and the reality is that's again part of the retention and making the people that work here, their jobs more efficient. But Mr. Adams.
Yeah, this Noel is always pushing for that, and we put it in the budget, and then every year council shuts it down.
Well, they spent some, just not very much. They spent some.
Why was the expenditure for network development IT so much lower last year than allocated? Any idea?
I am not sure about that. I would just be speculating, I guess.
And it does look like there's a pretty healthy fund balance, 200 appropriated last year, 210. So maybe we can move that to 100,000, but I think let's keep the PCs at the 125. So it looks like we're above that in spending, it seems like. So maybe 100 for network development and 125 for PC. And then, okay. And then Ms. Austin, are you going to discuss the Emerald Ash borer, or should we get some other input first?
You know my hot buttons, don't you? Yeah, Emerald Ash Borer and the roundabouts. No, I do think that it's interesting that it appears that with this budget that originally, if my recollection serves me well, it was around a $70,000 budget, and it was primarily focused on trying to do the ash borer injections. But it looks from this presentation, if you look at the page that relates to this, that and what's happened over the last couple of years is that instead of moving to protect the Inglewood trees, this budget's being used to replace trees that die. So I just want to note that appears to me that there's a policy shift, and be happy to hear something more from staff.
I second that. The council they were talking about, well, maybe it wasn't council, it might have been the city. The ash borer fund, the borer is not here yet, but there is trees dying, and then they cost money to cut down, quite a bit of money. I just had one cut down myself, but buying new trees and cutting down old trees, and that 50,000 is not going to go very far.
Yeah, and I think that was what I'm trying to get at, that it appears that there's been a policy shift. I'm not saying whether that's good or bad, but it does seem to me, a lot of you know that I work for a tree company, and at one point in time, I actually had priced it out if we took care of, at that time, the ash borer treatment. I think it used up about 50,000 of that $70,000 budget. And you're right, Carl, the ash borer is not quite this far south, but it's sort of it's a look back kind of thing. Once the borer's there, it's very difficult to help a tree recover from that. So anyway, just my thoughts.
And I can jump in and also allude to that a little bit too, is there was a little bit more fear of the boar being here sooner than what later is. It hasn't spread this far south yet, but the parks crews are looking and they're gearing up for when that happens. As far as using this fund to replace trees, we have funds in other areas in the open space fund that we have, and also some CPF money that we put into replacing trees as well. But really, that's a placeholder. We don't want to be behind the 8 ball. It does hit, so that we are fully prepared.
I'm happy to leave the budget in there, but I think I guess my point was that $2,300, from what I understand from the documents that were sent with this, is it's basically spent on replacement of trees. It's not been spent on ash borer treatments.
When we do get an ash borer infestation and it's fairly strong, what is the cutting down a tree or treating a tree? It's probably about the same cost. So what do we have an estimate as to what we're going to spend when that happens?
I don't have an estimate. I will get with staff and get that question answered for you for sure, though.
I know we have a count on ash trees, so that'll give us a estimate on what's going to be needed.
Yeah, Carl, if I recall correctly, I think it was in the neighborhood of 263 ash trees owned by the city of Englewood, but my memory is not all that good sometimes.
It's a pretty specific number for not a great memory, but is this only to mitigate city-owned trees, or will this help individuals if they have experienced the ash borer?
Some of the funding in there is to help the citizens if they're experiencing ash borer as well.
And can you clarify when you say it hasn't reached as far south? Where is it right now? Is it in Denver or North
I
Denver?
don't have an exact location of where it's at. I can get back with staff for that as well.
Okay. You know, I'm not, again, trying to cut out, I think, an important thing. I think our trees are very important. But maybe we can save a couple bucks there and maybe put that at like 25 or 30,000 to make sure that we have the money, you know, that gets us to $100,000. Maybe that gets us enough to, you know, be prepared still for it.
Oh, I think you can cut the budget. I think down to 25 would be fine.
Okay. All right, next we have art in public places, and I believe this is just the calculated number that we have to put on regardless. And even though we've got $100,000 in the budget right now, maybe we need to put some more art in. Go ahead.
I was just about to ask if that was a 5 or a 6 at our total so far, because I couldn't really tell. But it sounds like it's a 5,445 totaling for the column. Is that right?
I mean, I think we'll have to be at 5 million, so that'll just be 50,000, I guess will be the number.
I know we're just finding a starting point, but just wanted to make sure we weren't already
No,
at
that's a good
6
point.
for, or if we're at 5 for.
Actually, I'm sorry, it would be 25,000 at 5 million, right? No, I'm sorry, 50,000. Math is hard. 5 million times 0.01, 50,000, yeah.
Kate, are you asking just because
Yeah,
it's hard to read?
Yeah. Yes, like I think it's a 5, but it looks like 6. And I didn't know how over budget we were so far.
Oh, so sorry. You're currently at 5,445,000
Okay.
for tier 1, and then you put $250,000 in alley paving, which is tier 2. So you're currently at 5,695, so 5,695,000.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
So
with-
sorry.
With one big one still left, but I guess the goal will be to be at 5 million, if not exactly within a dollar or two or $500 or whatever the number ends up being. So do we have to put the 1% in? I believe that is the case, that regardless, we're required to put art and public places at 1% of these two funds.
I think
Yes, that's
Mr.
my
Anderson can
understanding.
answer that question better.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes,
that's
Mr.
my
Anderson, yeah.
understanding, yes.
I interrupted you, Mr. Anderson, if you could repeat that again.
I believe, yes, that 1% is, we need to match that.
So maybe we just put that at 50,000 because I think that's where we have to be at. Although maybe that just gives us, we might need some ideas of some places to put some public art.
It's 39, right? Am I on the wrong line?
The request was 39, but if it has to
Oh,
be
I see.
1%, then I think
Makes sense.
I think we have to put it at 50,000. Because we'll be at 5 million one way or another. Yeah. It's a circular reference, right? Okay, yeah, so let's move on. ADA compliance, is there a difference between that and the ADA, the accessibility ramps program? Yes.
Yes, so this is more specific to buildings and upgrading our buildings for ADA compliance.
Our current buildings, like, is in this building or like the recreation centers or
All of the above, as requests come in, and making things ADA compliant if ADA requests are made. We also maintain certain ADA things, example, the rec center, we have a chair lift to go between floors, things of that nature.
Why are the other years 0? Is that because this is a new kind of allocation?
I think it's because we're seeing aged equipment and we're seeing increased requests for ADA accommodations and trying to make sure we can do that.
And maybe just to build on that, was this funded in from other places at all in previous years?
I don't believe so.
I would have a hard time saying to not fund that, but yeah, go ahead, Ms. Berg.
Could we get a breakdown of, like, by building and location, what costs might look like and what types of projects are needed?
Sure.
I mean, $100,000 to do ADA improvements in a building isn't a lot of money. So I'd like to be able to, if we're going to leave that in the budget, prioritize based on needs in the building.
Yeah, I was thinking that same thing. That's probably not going to go very far again. So what are those projects? Absolutely.
And they're generally not substantial. You know, if you think about the elevator, it's actually a mobile elevator. We did have to do some work on that this past year due to age, and we had some structural issues with it. So I believe we actually ended up replacing it. And that was in, I think, the $30,000 range as an example.
All right. And the next one is the one that always gets me. Facilities and operations isn't a project. So why does it come out of this fund?
Yeah, so this one is, I believe it's actually under the more reoccurring style, but we do have significant projects for facilities. Our buildings are aging, roofs are leaking, HVACs are not in great shape. They are now, pushing 20 plus years, 20 to 30 years in age. And we've got a significant number of projects that we've identified that need to be done that are outlined in the document here.
And is this one of the ones that could potentially come out of the bonding? I'm noticing in the description, there's Pirates Cove, as well as many others, Jefferson Fire Station and Coma Fire Station. Is this possible to come from any of that other funding that's being sought?
From the Parks Bond? I don't believe so. The Parks Bond as currently framed, and Brad, jump in if you have additional information, but that's more for not maintenance or those kinds of projects. It's more wholesale upgrades. At Pirates Cove specifically, I believe they were looking at new slides, changing the pool, things of that nature.
Yes, that's correct, Victor. The bond is to upgrade a number of the parks in the city. It's also there to upgrade the irrigation of all of the parks, and it's actually to expand Pirates Cove with some new amenities, and then also for the recreation. We'll expand the aquatics area and that one as well. So that's what the bond initiative is going to. It's not going for any basically facility or operation specifically.
And if I could just add to that, the reason why these are considered more one-time is because these are larger items that fail. And as opposed to saying, okay, we're going to put $5,000 away. I mean, we're going through this exercise right now with budget. If it's not immediate, we don't really look at it from a maintenance perspective because that's not a viable budgeting option, unfortunately, given our constraints.
And if this isn't fully funded, how do they prioritize which projects are the priority?
It'll be urgency, life safety, and then also further degradation. So a great example, if it's a roof, if the roof is leaking and we have issues, that has significant impacts on the rest of the structure, which cost would skyrocket if water got into certain buildings and things of that nature. So we would prioritize based on that, given the total budget that we're allocated.
And it looks like we only spent 370,000 last year. Is there a plan to spend the 1.7 plus the 1.6, 1.5?
Yes.
So there's specific projects that have been identified already?
Yes, sir. We do have a list of projects, which is how we came up with that very interesting 500,000. Based on estimates, we actually have a couple of estimates in hand. We're ready to rock and roll on a couple of the projects pending, getting to that point.
Are any of those possible to push? Like, could we put $1 million down here to get 3/4 of them finished or 2/3? I know that's kind of a general question, but yeah, are they broken down enough that maybe some of them could happen or maybe not all of them?
Yeah, I mean, certainly some of them are a higher priority. I will say, if you look on the paper here, Como Fire Station is listed. We actually have an intergovernmental agreement with Denver. So we actually have an obligation there. So some things will take a priority from a contract standpoint with other agencies, but certainly we could prioritize them. We would love to do them all. We consider them all somewhat a priority, and deferred maintenance tends to increase costs long-term.
Yeah, agreed. And I don't want to cover, maybe for next meeting, if we could get a breakdown of what those are and which ones are kind of obligated to spend to at least have a better understanding, because obviously we put 1.567 on here, where all of a sudden it, $7 million.
Yes, we could absolutely do that. We could give you a priority list and then maybe put notes as which one's actually an obligation, which is why it's higher in the list versus some things that may be lower down.
All right, thank you. So looking at this, there's actually no, anything else on the facilities and operations? Anyone? Okay, so there's no actual request for the Civic Center?
Chair, I'm sorry, did you want me to put a placeholder number in for
Yeah.
facilities and operations?
Yes, please. Let's put in the 1.567, I think, for right now. We can start from there.
No, that's a good question. That is a good question. I mean, the fire stations are a given. But the Civic Center, right? Yeah, I still have concerns because it's, if you got anything that could last 3 years, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like you're requesting anything for this year, for 24?
For
The Security Civic Center and Rec Center?
Security Civic Center, that is really ongoing challenges that we've had around security with gates. There's some pull gates within the building. We've had some issues with the doors outside of the badge readers, or maybe in addition to the badge readers. So the security in and around the facility continues to be a little bit of a challenge. We anticipate having to continue to do repairs and upgrades. You may recall also, they're not necessarily in this description, but there was some discussion about actually adding metal detectors to the rest of the building. City Council elected to go with a different alternative. So we'll continue to monitor that. That could come up down the road, again, depending on what transpires.
Do we still have the 4 security people here?
Yes, sir. And we will be going to city council with a contract for Allied later this month.
Okay,
And that is per council direction. We have a guard at each door plus one roaming within the building.
And I think prioritizing safety is, something I wish we didn't have to do, but absolutely something we need to do.
I have heard that those outside plugs at the bandstand get vandalized a lot. Is that part of it?
It is part of it. We do maintain the RTD elevator. If we could never put another elevator outside, that would be great.
Can we get
it is
RTD to pay for that?
If we could find a way to do that, that was an IGA discussion probably 5 years ago or better. It's a challenge, and that comes with the security aspects. Maintaining the elevator is not included in this number, but the security to patrol and, if we look for enhancements, could potentially come out of this.
Can I ask then, do we need a number then for 2024 as a request in this line item?
If we were to cut it in half, I think we need to have something, because I would anticipate some security.
I'm showing
it's blank
zero.
now.
It's blank right now.
Yeah, may I clarify, on the spreadsheet that we received from finance, there's not a number, a requested number in 2024.
Oh, okay. And
Is there a number on the project sheet?
on the project sheet, there is a
And
number.
I'll update that with Jenny, but I can put it in here.
Yeah, the request in 2024 on the project sheet is 20,000.
20,000, thank
And it's
you.
Also for 25 and 26.
Sold.
Still going the wrong way.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I agree. Okay. But that gets us through the tier one projects, which are really obviously the priority. And, we're only $2 million over. We're only, 40% over.
Great.
That being said, we don't need to make decisions today that are final. I would like to have everyone take a quick look here at the tier two and see if there are any that we really feel need to be allocated in really a tier one capacity. And I think we talked about alley paving and putting $250,000 in there. And I think we leave that in there for today. It's probably, one of those things that's putting a Band-Aid on a gushing wound, and maybe is there money better spent in other places, but go ahead, Kate.
I'm sorry, Chair. Oh, Ms. Austin had her hand up. Yes, she has her hand back up. Just wanted to point that out to you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Austin.
Well, thank you. You are going on to the tier two thing, so I put my hand down because of that. But I would like to try and make you a little bit of money here, Colin, and suggest that perhaps that $200,000 for the Dartmouth calming project at least be sort of asterisked. And I would like to request for staff to go back, since this is dependent on a CDOT grant, which I understand has been approved. But I think it would be appropriate for us, instead of keep having this placeholder on the budget when we need so much money other places, that we ask staff to go back to CDOT to find out an actual timetable for that calming project. And that might get us an extra $200,000. And also request from staff if there's any other traffic studies along that Dartmouth, Logan, Downing Court intersections, because like I said earlier when I was speaking, I believe that those crash and traffic counts were from 2018, which is almost 5 years ago with the pandemic and everything else in between. So I'd like to have a little look-see, see if you have any other additional data to see if those roundabouts are really needed at this time.
Victor, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. We can absolutely look at the accident data to date. I would say I did some digging while we were going through the rest of the project. So current funds available for the project are 1.7 million. That includes the bond, or excuse me, the grant. The cost estimate came in at close to a little over 2.2 million. So we had a gap of about $1 million plus or minus. CDOT's coming to the table with an additional 878,000 at our request. And so to close that one gap million, that's where the 200 comes from for construction.
Well,
Is that with,
That's fantastic news. Do we have a timetable on that?
The funds are available now. We've actually done the IGAs and the plans are wrapping up. So I would anticipate the RFP for construction going out Q3 of this year.
Okay.
And then we'll probably be up against weather. I will confirm that and then we can report back.
Okay, that's great. I'm just trying to identify a couple of areas.
Sure.
Of course, there's a couple of them are my pet projects, but also we see in these budgets, if you've been on P&Z for more than a few years, we see these placeholder numbers that keep getting transferred from year to year to year, when we really need to be able to free up those placeholder numbers for projects that are desperately needed in the community. That's all I was trying to address. So.
thank you, Ms. Hassan. Additionally to that, is the estimate without the middle roundabout, or was that including the middle roundabout? So I guess could that potentially go down?
That's without the middle roundabout. Yeah, no, we tried to cut to the bone.
Mr. Adams?
That's 2 roundabouts in,
That is correct.
and you have drawings that you could bring in to show how they're going to be laid out.
Yes.
Okay,
Their engineering, I'll see if we have something that has like a full sheet, a roll plot, so to speak, so you can kind of see without all the additional layers of callouts and things.
Does that
and
include,
the roundabouts, I'm sure will cut down the speed, and obviously that's what it's for. But it'll help with car traffic, but pedestrian and bicycle. I've heard that the roundabouts are very hazardous for pedestrians and bicycles.
Actually, national data shows they're a little bit safer, and we will be doing enhanced crossings as well. We're looking at something called RRFBs, which actually exist on Broadway today. Not really appropriate for the Broadway crossing, which is why we're upgrading that to something called a HAWK, which is actually a traffic signal modified. But the RFBs for a 2-lane roundabout will bring additional attention to the PED crossings. But yeah, I'd be happy to bring in a kind of a roll plot and share that.
Broadway, you said? You're going to make modifications at Dartmouth and Broadway?
No, I'm sorry. I was referring to the PED crossing that's like mid-block at Broadway that not a lot of people use. You push the button and it just blinks. It's more of an indication to drivers, assuming they're paying attention, that there is a pedestrian that's going to cross the street. We have a project to upgrade that.
I did hear about that.
Yes.
Since we're on the topic, and we just want to briefly maybe touch on tier 2, maybe you can speak to the neighborhood traffic calming program on line 29. We had $200,000 audited means spent, right? And we want to spend $100,000. Can you talk about, I don't know if you have any specific areas, if it's around schools or Oxford is a pretty big street. Any other plans for slowing people down?
Well, the neighborhood traffic calming program is a program that we're looking to stand up. We actually presented an overview to ETAC last month, I believe. It's a neighborhood driven program where a resident would fill out an application, get sponsors from their adjacent neighbors, and we're continuing to develop the program. From there, the proposal is that the city would collect data to quantify and confirm the concern and make sure it's not just a perception, that there is actually a speeding problem or stop sign running or whatever it may be. And then we would then look to our toolbox of options, which could include many roundabouts, things like speed cushions, which have gaps in them for emergency vehicles to go through at regular speed, but the average consumer vehicle can't. The gaps don't match the wheelbase. Radar speed limit signs, which we already have a few in the city. You drive by them. The newer ones actually collect data. They don't get your license plate or anything. We don't hand out tickets, but it tells us how fast people are going in the time of day. And then we can use that data and coordinate with PD and say, hey, we got a speeding problem at 8 a.m. on Tuesday or whatever it is. And PD can then do targeted enforcement. So it can help, strategically place those resources on those roadways. So there's a number of options, but we're looking to get that toolbox stood up and then implemented.
That's great.
jumping back to Dartmouth, is there any property acquisition needed as part of that project?
I don't believe there's any right of way. There will be some temporary construction easements on a few of the corners, not all. We are trying to minimize that as much as possible.
So that'll add up very quickly.
Absolutely.
I think the one item that I noticed on the tier 2 that just is the elephant in the room is the 15 million for the service center. And you know, I feel like we at least have to recognize it and then understand what the plan is and what happens if we punt that, because there's no way obviously we're funding
Sure.
that, but yeah.
Can I just
Yeah.
add to that with the request for facilities and operations, if any of that's specific to the, what is it called? The center? Service center.
There's probably a few in there, and we'll put that list together. As mentioned, if you've not been to the service center, I'd be happy to give anybody a tour. I think 1950s, 1960s, like old military base kind of layout. That's what it feels like. It's a very old facility. The space could definitely be utilized in a more efficient manner. But we do have a lot of old buildings. We have a lot of old storage. The crew is running out of the main admin building. We have a couple of Kwanzaa huts that are just probably not habitable for day to day, among other things that probably need to be tested. There's just no telling. It is a very large campus. There's a ton of opportunity there. We store materials there. We keep all our vehicles there. We service fleet there, including Sheridan and Cherry Hills Village. They bring their fleet vehicles over in addition to our public works vehicles, PD, parks. So we do a lot of good things there at that campus. Utilities is on that campus. Parks is on that campus, and our stormwater team is on that campus as well. So it is a much needed project, but we certainly understand there's budget constraints. But we took the approach this year of we want to get it out there on the radar. There was some discussion last year, and this predates me a little bit, when City Center was going to redevelop, that some of the funds there might flow towards the service center. And so there was talk of standing up a master plan for the service center. When the developer backed out, that paused. So.
How do we tie that in? Do you have any, I mean, because we're getting another developer. I guess I don't understand how we can tie those funds in by selling this building, or?
Well, I think the original intent was there was some thought that the sale of the property would yield funds that could help rehab the service center. Maybe there's a discussion that the dollar amount dropped significantly and it's just a master plan. So it could be substantially less to engage a consultant to help us master plan what that campus wants to be, which would be the first step anyways, if the 15 million were to move forward.
I'm up for a tour.
Yeah, let's do a tour.
Okay, I'd be happy to coordinate that. Nancy, can I go through you and coordinate? Okay.
Sorry.
I'd like to go on the
absolutely.
tour too. Yes.
You do have to come in person though, Michelle.
I will come
And I
in
will say,
person,
if we go
absolutely.
early enough, our streets crew will happily offer to take everybody on a tour of their day-to-day operations for a ride along.
Oh,
We got
I'd
some-
love that. I
We got
would
some streets
absolutely
guys
love
that
that.
just love to get folks to go ride along in the trucks and. do
So
all
if
that
I
fun
could
stuff.
request any commissioners interested or staff interested in going on this tour, please email me.
Will do. Thank you.
Can we just say yes unless otherwise noted? Yeah. How about if you're not interested, can we email you? Yeah,
Whatever works for the commission.
okay. I don't want to forget because that happens sometimes.
Off topic really quick. Am I able to leave for 5 minutes and come back?
No, you have to stay change your seat.
I would
I was gonna
say
ask
yes,
for a
I
break,
would.
but I can totally just step away and be right back.
I'd say go step away and be right back, and just to maybe place where we're going with this. We don't need to get to the final number. We're gonna have another meeting in 2 weeks to get to that final number. I don't know how much more anybody wants to talk about any of these specific items. I think we got through a really good amount of information today. Appreciate everything that that was being presented, but yeah, go ahead, Kate. No, I was just gonna start talking, so please go.
Sorry, for the 1% of art in public places, can any of that be used either for placemaking or for like crosswalk art or things like that as part of Dartmouth?
Good question. I do not know. We'll have to check internally with staff and see if that's an option. Brad, do you know by chance?
I don't, so I'm gonna defer to staff also, and I'll find that out. I'll put down the list of things to find out and get back to you guys on.
Okay, and realistically, so what I would like everyone to do, we have this lovely spreadsheet. Thank you, Nancy, for printing this all out. But if you can send us maybe the updated version of it to see where we are all at. And then I request that we come next in 2 weeks to be ready to, sharpen our pencils and try to figure out really what we can cut so that we can present a budget to the council. And I guess I will just reiterate one more time. I think we're set at $5 million right now. There's no chance of additional funding from any of the other sources coming in anywhere. And is 5 million our final number?
Is there any chance that we can get answers to some of our follow-up questions or information requested prior to the next meeting so that we can actually refine our numbers and get to where we need to get?
I think it's a great.
So that's what I was going to ask the commission. We'll work with the directors to get answers to those. Are you all right if they respond through Brian and myself to you via a memo, or do you want them to come back to the next meeting?
I think I would love to have that information before the next meeting. So, as soon as possible would be great. And I think if the memo format or however, if it doesn't have to be a formal memo, that's okay too. If, whatever.
Just a question
something.
answer.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll work with the 3 directors and give them when we need that. Your packet will go out the Thursday before the meeting. So I'll work with the 3 directors and Brian, and I'll get that pulled together for you.
Okay, so with that, honestly, I'd like to, keep moving down the agenda unless there's any other items that we want to talk about on these funds. Okay, not seeing any. Let's go to staff's choice. Victor? Yeah.
I'll just be happy to coordinate that tour on a non-rainy, dry, sunny day. So not this week.
I was gonna ask if we go along on like a snowplow route, but I guess, but
Well,
it's a little much for May, so
Well,
maybe.
knock on wood. Hopefully
During the
that won't be an
hailstorms
option.
tomorrow.
Can we drive the snowplows?
You need a CDL for that. Although we do have a V plow, which is used for neighborhoods when we get large events that hooks up to a pickup truck. Although it slightly looks like something out of Mad Max, but it's efficient.
Mr. Strom?
I don't have anything tonight.
Thank you. Attorney's choice.
Yes, hi, thank you. So first, let me start off by apologizing. There was a question about Sam's Auto PUD, and I confused the issue about the recall and the referendum. So let me clarify and explain exactly what's happening. So the city received a referendum petition that pertains to the Sam's Auto PUD. And the petition states what their petitioners are seeking to get signatures on is a statement that says, by signing this petition, you are protesting this ordinance, which is the Sam's Auto PUD, going into effect. And if sufficient signatures are obtained, causing Englewood City Council to reconsider this ordinance by either repealing it in full or calling a special election to submit it to a vote of the electors of the city. So the petitioners were required to obtain 1,466 signatures by May 4th. Those signatures, we did receive the signatures. However, the clerk's office is still going through the verification process. They have 30 days to do so. Under Colorado law, to the extent that those signatures, the requirements are met and the petition is certified, it would go back to city council to potentially reconsider the ordinance. If it is not repealed, then it would go to the electors by either a special or a general election to have them decide whether or not the portion of the ordinance that is subject to the petition could potentially be repealed. So that's what's happening. It would likely be a special election to the extent that we get the signatures are obtained and verified.
So can you clarify that timeline again? So once the signatures are verified, it would go back to council to see if they, in essence, would repeal what the plan and zoning had proposed, and it won't come back to us. That'll be only at the council level.
That's correct, yes.
And then if they do not repeal it, then it would automatically go to a special election.
Yes, so so I'll read the section of the statute on that. So if upon reconsideration, the ordinance or part thereof protested is not repealed, the legislative body shall, which is a requirement, that's mandatory, submit the measure to a vote of the registered electors at a regular or special election held not less than 60 days and not more than 150 days after the final determination of petition sufficiency. So that's the general outline of what's happening here.
Is there precedence for this? I mean, has that happened before? I mean, assume in some place it has, but in recent memory, or is it something that you might have known?
So with my experience, I've been at the city of Englewood for a little over 2 years. It hasn't happened in that time frame. I mean, this is the referendum process is part of Colorado law, so it certainly has happened in other jurisdictions. I can't speak to whether or not it's happened here.
You had mentioned a certain part of the ordinance. Did the petition mention particulars?
The petition is it states it generally, it doesn't speak to it specifically, at least the portion that I'm looking at. It's just that by signing the petition, it would cause the city council to reconsider this ordinance by either repealing it or putting it to a vote of a special election.
Okay, so it's all or nothing. It's repeal is all they're looking for.
That is, I'm just double checking to see if there's another part of this that I'm missing. That's what it, I believe that's what it states. Yes.
Thank you.
So this is above and beyond the typical, like an appeal process for a PUD? Is this separate because then it's already become an ordinance or?
Right, so that there's then a different recourse proceeding that citizens have if they want to petition an ordinance that's been passed. Sorry.
It is the number of votes or the number of signatures of 1,400. Is that the specific percentage of our population?
Yes, well, it has to do with, it's not just a specific percentage of the population. I believe it also pertains to the amount of people that voted in the prior election that preceded the petition. I don't have it exactly in front of me, so I might be a little bit off on wording here or there, but that's generally what it pertains to.
And thank you for all this information, but it does
Sure.
sound like realistically it's not going to come back to us in any shape or form, or?
No, it wouldn't be coming back to P and Z. It would go to council and then potentially the electors.
Okay, well, I
Okay.
appreciate that information. Just because we were actually split internally, I think in a weird way, in wanting some additional desirements coming out of the development, whereas, there was a lot of accommodations that were made. So I thought it came up to be a pretty good balance, but yeah.
I just have
What's that?
can I ask another
Yeah.
question? So if it were to go to a vote of the people, it'd be a vote of the people on one specific property or on, that's based on that ordinance.
Yes, it would be about that specific ordinance that approved that PUD. So it wouldn't affect others.
Could that be by November?
So I have to go through the calendaring. I think it would likely be a special election before November. based off of how all the timing works, because the city clerk's office has 30 days from when the signatures were received, which was just this week, and then how that all gets spaced out.
Well, that's exciting.
Government at work, yes.
Yes. And, you know, it is good to know that those are a possibility, and obviously we want to do the will of the people here. So if that's the way it goes, then we will understand it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. Anything else?
No, nothing else at this time.
Thank you.
I got a question on the recall of the council members. Is it a percentage of their district or a percentage of the city?
So that also, that's a great question. That also pertains to the last time, I think it's the last time that those members were up for election. It's a percentage of that voting electorate. Again, I could be a little bit off on that explanation. So I can follow up with you on that specifically.
Thank you again for that information and the follow-up.
Absolutely.
All right. And from there, I think we go to Commissioner's choice. So I'll just go down the row here. Mr. Adams.
There's a lot of talk about replacing the city center, and it's a long process to get to that point. And before SKB pulled out, it was going to be years before they could have come to an agreement to actually move the city center. And at this point, with SKB pulling out and the population of the outflow of Colorado, where people are moving out of Colorado because of whatever reason, rent, whatever, developers are probably a little hesitant in coming into Inglewood and building an Inglewood Center transportation hub. So that's going to be temporary, I would assume. But with the outflow of Colorado and Denver area, there's still a shortage of housing, definitely. But it's not as panicky as it used to be, with thousands of people moving in every month. Thousands are leaving every month. So just don't start pulling boards off the city center yet. It's a little too early.
Thank you, Carl. And I think, you know, Inglewood is, and I'll make it, you know what, actually, I don't think I'm supposed to do that. I can do that in my own commissioner's choice at that point. So I think you bring up some good points, though. Appreciate the thought there. Brenda?
I'm good, thank you.
Kate?
I'm also good.
Okay.
Nothing for me.
I just wanted to call out last night's meeting, Code Next, and some of the other topics there. The council are definitely looking to P&Z for a lot of input. I think it would be helpful to have some to aggregate what they were specifically deferring to us, so that we can make sure that we're providing some good input to them.
Yes, Kate.
That reminded me, I was watching that meeting and I think there was a couple comments from council members specifically saying, I want P&Z to look at that, like parking and things like that. And if a little bit more information about what that means, like what kind of analysis are they expecting? Just so then the conversations that we have are leading to what they're looking for.
Sure, and I can kind of comment on that. So at the meeting last night, I think at first they had kind of directed some items to go back to P&Z. Towards the end, we tried to kind of circle back and say, maybe we already have a UDC steering committee meeting set up for next week. It's already on the schedule. Why don't we take these items back to them rather than just straight to the P&Z? So a lot of those items that they still were undecided on, or they didn't have a majority of a decision. There were 6 council members there last night, so there were some even votes on a couple of things. So those items will be coming back to you all for some additional discussion in the next, hopefully we can get them all covered in the next meeting.
It might be good to have a list of those ahead of time too, just so we have some guided conversations in that UDC meeting. I know you'll do that, Brian, of trying to guide us to where we need to go, but that was actually.
We will do our best as it's getting it out to you by Thursday.
Yeah. And they had asked for suggestions, and I know they listened to this meeting. It was something I actually thought about after that was we intentionally have the P and Z and then members of the public to make up the UDC commission, but there's no head of that commission. Brian, again, you've done a great job, Chris and others from the consultant team of trying to organize this, but in future ones, it might be good to kind of assign a lead for each one of those commissions so that somebody can kind of take the reins and at least organize the questions and, kind of push in a direction. I think when there's no head from the public side, from us, our side, there maybe is some holding back that might happen that might not if there's kind of a guided lead. So maybe just as a suggestion for a future commission to maybe identify a single person or a chair and a co-chair. Anything else, Aaron, that you wanted to add for commissioners? Okay. Just a couple things talking about what Carl, oh, I'm sorry, Miss Austin, thank you. Yes, anything from you?
It's hard for me to tell who is speaking, especially with some of the newer members of the commission, but I would like to definitely agree with what Colin was just saying, that having that whole UDC process without a chair it felt like we were oftentimes just the recipients of information, not participating. So I would agree with that comment that I think it would be helpful if there is a chair going forward, and I think it would make the process much better. So that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
And anything else you wanted to have as Commissioner's choice, Ms. Austin?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. So just follow up a little bit of what Carl had said of, people moving out, and I understand that, but I think Inglewood does have a great opportunity. We're still considered somewhat affordable in the grand scheme of the metro area. And I'm not saying that means that the city center is going to get redeveloped tomorrow, but I still think we need to be prepared for that and hope and be prepared so that it can happen when the opportunity does come. So, but appreciate your thoughts on that. And the only other thing that I wanted to add is we talked about maybe doing some training, which I think, Mr. Strom, you said that you would be able to maybe help facilitate.
Yes, no, we can help
Victoria,
facilitate
yeah.
training. Mhm.
Great. I think, new members and old members, it's good to get a refresher every once in a while too. So obviously we have a few things on our docket with UDC, but maybe something we can get in the next months.
Yes, and that's something we'd want to coordinate with the clerk's office as well, because I know they have some training that they are intending to roll out soon as well.
Mr. Adams?
On affordability, there's the council was talking about a committee that they're trying to get together. I think it was 9 to 12 people, I believe, something like that. An affordable, I don't know what they're going to do, but they're looking into the affordability of housing in Inglewood. And if they can do anything, great.
Right, it's a task force.
Task force, yeah. And they're looking for people.
That's good to know. So if anybody's interested, obviously we have a good connection with that. Obviously we're all trying to volunteer for a lot of things. So, but I'm sure they would love to have any of us here. So with that, unless there's anything else, I think we adjourn. I don't have to close anything, right? There was no public hearing. So, all right. Thank you everyone for coming, and good seeing everyone in person, and good hearing from you, Michelle.
Thank you. I'll be there next time.
Great. Bye.
Bye.